Welcome back. How's everyone doing this morning? I'm trying to get my voice. How's everybody doing this morning? Good, good. It's great to see you bright and early. Some of you saw me last night. Lynn Jennings, Senior Director of National State Partnerships here at the Education Trust in the National Office. And it is so wonderful to see you bright and early this morning. I want to introduce my colleague, Sergio Lopez.
Hi.
Good morning, Sergio.
Hey everyone, I'm Sergio Lopez. You can also call me Sergio, Senior Associate of National State Partnerships at the Ed Trust.
All right.
Here in DC.
Okay. So to get started, we figured we needed to get some energy going. We're not going to have you do jumping jacks. We're not going to have you run around. But Sergio definitely has some exercise for us this morning, right, Sergio?
Yeah, we do. We want to do, before we start, can we give a shout out to the student performance yesterday? They were so great. Just to let everyone know, Lynn and I are also singers, and we have been working on a number. We're hopefully going to perform it tonight at the reception if the vibe is right.
We have?
It gives major Shakira, J-Lo Super Bowl performance. So act right. But let's see who's here. There's so many folks from all over the country. Folks from California. California, can we hear you? What? The first state is here, also known as the loudest state, Delaware. Our friends from Kentucky. Yay. Maryland's here, hosting us. The state of Massachusetts is here. Of course, we have New York. We have the state that is home to what is most likely the greatest public university in the entire country.
Oh, God.
It just happens to be my alma mater, the state of Texas. Awesome. And then we also have Washington, West Coast folks, Washington. Excellent. And then we also have the host of the next Bootcamp, which will be in Memphis, Tennessee. Awesome. I love that energy. I'm really excited to see everyone today. We're going to have a fun day.
Thank you. All right, we also want to take a moment just for our funders who make this possible. If any of our funders are in the room, we want to make sure to give you a huge shout out for bringing us back in person so we can see each other. So thank you. And then, of course, we want to just acknowledge that it's been, almost 2 years since we've been able to be together. And so we just wish you on behalf of Ed Trust that during this time of uncertainty, tough times, that your family has been safe, healthy, and then we continue this with healthy, safe family and friends. I guess in spite of or during this time of uncertainty, we also want to acknowledge the times of happiness, things that have gone well. Huge shout out to our country. We have our first Black woman Supreme Court Justice, so I think we should acknowledge that. Sergio mentioned our students yesterday. What our students have done over the past 2 years, all of our students across the country should get a huge shout out for what they've done. Our teachers, our parents, our families, and of course you. What it means that you all have come back here and are continuing this fight for education, for students, for young people, for the future of our country and the future of the world. So I just want to give all of you a round of applause. As we move on, I want to I'm always told to do the public service announcement in terms of our COVID policy and protocols here during the conference. So this is just a reminder, everybody, that we are masking during the time of the conference. As you're moving around, we're masking. Also, just please respect everybody's wristband. Green, you can give me a hug. Come on up, just give it to me, all right? This green. Yellow, fist bump. And then red means friendly, cordial, but please keep your distance. So we're just asking everybody, please take a look at the wristband and respect them.
Excellent, thank you, Lynn. Before we kick off our program today, let me walk you through what to expect. In a few moments, we will introduce our moderator for the first plenary session, followed by breakouts, which will take place in this room on the lobby level in the Freedom rooms. After the breakouts, please join us back here for a luncheon plenary. After the luncheon plenary, we will close the day with breakout sessions and a reception, where Lynn and I will be performing. The evening is yours to explore DC, so feel free to ask your planning team for some great restaurant recommendations in DC.
All right, so let's get started for our plenary. I get the honor of introducing my fabulous boss, Denise Fort. When I first started working at Ed Trust about 10 years ago, that's when I was working on the federal side, which basically means I was a lobbyist for Ed Trust. And I always tell folks the story that, I don't know if Denise knows this, but she's one of the first people I met when I did one of my first visits on the Hill. And the reason why is because someone told me, you've got to meet this fabulous black woman, Denise Fort, who's just running things on the Hill. You've got to know her, you've got to know her. And so I met her, and she's calm, she's also got such presence and strength, and she's also kind. And I have to say, when I was like coming up there on the Hill in DC, I didn't get a lot of that or see a lot of that. So Denise, I don't know if I've ever told you that, but thank you. It just meant so much that it made it a welcoming environment. And I have to say, as a young professional, it made me think, I can do this job. So thank you, Denise. So fast forward about 10 years, and now I have Denise, who really is like down the hall, as my boss. And so Denise has over 20 years. I'll give you a little bit about her, but you can read her bio. Over 20 years of working in federal legislative branches, also executive branch. She worked on, like I said, on the Hill with Bobby Scott, our ranking member for many years. She was just basically running the staff, running everything in ed policy. When we were going over legislation, Denise would come in, make sure everything was going the way it should, smoothly, and then wave, like, you all handle business and take care of things. From there, she went on to the Obama administration, where she served in the U.S. Department of Ed as the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary and Acting Assistant Secretary in the Office of Planning, Evaluation, and Policy Development. Basically, that meant she oversaw the policy and the budget development for the U.S. Department of Ed. Again, Denise is rocking it and taking care of things and handling business. So with that, today Denise is going to have a conversation. She said, this is what I want to do, is have a conversation, a fireside chat with one of the vets, if you need the history of Ed Trust, what's happened at Ed Trust, is Karin Chenoweth. So first, Karin, I just want you to stand up, because Karin has all her books, what she knows, her passion, and I'm gonna let Denise talk more about it, but Denise said we've got to have a conversation with Karin, as Karin is moving to the next chapter, and she's retiring. So I'm sure we won't see. You will be around, right? No? Yes, you will. Yes, you will. You'll be around. But Karin's is going to share with us this morning some of her knowledge, counsel, and also I'm sure she's always giving marching orders for how we should move forward. So with that, Karin, Denise.
That was very sweet. I didn't want to cry before I came up here, but that was very kind of you. It was a great introduction. I am so excited to see all of you. You can't even imagine. And what's even better is I get to see most of you outside of a box now. It's nice to see Bridget again. And even my own team who, we're back together in the office. So I'm just thrilled that all of y'all could make it. And also just, everybody's felt it these past 2 years of, I held a lot of tension in my shoulders. But on, when was it? Tuesday of this week, and I walked into the office and I saw Lynn and I saw Grace Sterling, who's our new director in Washington State, and I saw Jordan, and they were together in a conference room, and I opened the door and I said, I'm going to be smiling all day, aren't I? Because it was so good to see everybody in person. So this really, really warms my heart, and I just want to thank the EdTrust staff who has put so much into this event. So can we give them a round of applause to Sergio, Lynn, Ray Galloway, our favorite ray of sunshine, who always tries to, he does an amazing job bringing a lot of sunlight to everybody. So thank you all. So we named this boot camp Equity Matters, a path forever. And we named it for a reason. As advocates for education equity, all of us in this room understand why equity matters. We understand how a quality education is a civil right and a great equalizer. So I'm not going to spend that much time preaching to the choir about why equity matters, but I do really want to talk about the second part of the title of our boot camp, A Path Forward. Now, when we talk about a path forward, what does that look like? We know that when it comes to advocating for educational equity, the journey thus far has been full of twists and turns, progress and setbacks, sunny days and not so sunny days. Many of us have the bumps and bruises to prove it. Raise your hand if you have some bumps and bruises. Anybody? Okay, I hear you. As we've journeyed on this path forward to education equity, there have also been days when misinformation and disinformation have clouded the truth. Days when zero-sum fears have clouded win-win aspirations. Days when identity politics have clouded a valid acceptance of how students see themselves and how they choose to live their lives. And this has provided a lot of cover for those who see it more beneficial to impede our journey together than to promote our progress. And as advocates, that can be incredibly disconcerting, if not downright disorienting, to always be on the precipice of a rabbit hole threatening to plunge us off course. But as advocates, we want to blaze trails over the horizon, not timidly tread through uncommon terrain. We are trailblazers, every one of us. So it's good to have gatherings like this to strategize about how we keep momentum in our movement. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing over the next 24 hours. So you all know at EdTrust, we always start with the data. Over the past 24 months, we've been building awareness, tapping into the strong relationships we have with you and that you have with folks on the ground, making the case for data-driven strategies we know will help students of color and students from low-income backgrounds. The data has been telling us over and over again that those are the ones that have been most impacted by the pandemic, those who have fallen furthest behind. Data from Curriculum Associates tells us that the percentage of Black and Latino third grade students underprepared for grade level reading and math increased at double the rate of white students after 12 months of interrupted learning. Then in March, just recently, the GAO reported a staggering 1.1 million students were missing from school last year in the wake, 1.1 million. So the time is now to find these students. We need to reconnect with them, re-engage with them, and use those evidence-based strategies that EdTrust has been talking about to make up for that lost learning time. Intensive tutoring, summer programs, extending the school year, extending or restructuring school days. It doesn't mean retaining students. That's not an answer to unfinished learning. And in fact, the data shows us it does more harm than good. But the great news is that our advocacy is an impact. We've submitted plans to the U.S. Department of Education, and we also know that about 17 other states have been submitting plans that include a lot of EdTrust work. At least 5 of them have committed to building statewide tutoring programs. And then just last month, the Biden-Harris administration released its FY23 budget, big increase, 21% in education funding, which included the decision to recommit to several of our existing education, our essential education priorities. But more needs to be done. There's always more to be done. And it's up to advocates like us to demand resource equity so that funds will be used in ways that will have the greatest impact on students who need it most. That means, and I'm looking at all y'all because we're going to do it together, revving up our ongoing efforts on the local and state levels, demanding more of our leaders to prioritize educational equity, and positioning ourselves to be more on the offense than defense. And increasingly, that path means effective education, effective messaging. We cannot let the culture wars win the messaging battle. When so-called critical race theory, in other words, teaching honest history, gets rabbit-holed into the notion that our ultimate goal is to put black boots on white necks, our path forward is threatened. When we allow policymakers to wink at this whitewashing, turn a blind eye to ignorance, and ignite issues that shouldn't even be giving off smoke, our path forward is threatened. And each of you face different political environments, different rabbit holes in your respective states, but I believe in the power of partnerships and coalitions, that building the. So I'll leave you with this. In schools across the nation, there's a trust deficit between the education ideals of our society, having promised that all students should have equitable education. There's a trust deficit between that and what we actually deliver, and a gulf that's disproportionately wide for students of color and students from low-income backgrounds. Decades of inadequate classroom and school diversity, student supports and intervention, learning-ready facilities, positive inviting school climate, rigorous content. Our systems are failing too many students of color, too many students from low-income backgrounds before the pandemic, and even more now. We fail students when we don't give them access to high-quality early childhood. We fail students when we don't give them culturally responsive teachers who look like them and have high expectations for them. We fail students when we don't demand transparency on everything from assessments to per pupil spending. And we not only fail students, but we build even more mistrust when we choose security guards over counselors, suspensions over empathy. But I have long believed that out of adversity comes opportunity. As fierce advocates, we will not get weary. We will continually avoid those rabbit holes and follow the data. We will continue to use it to stand up and speak out for what's right. A path forward that feeds every student's innate desire to learn, values diversity, accepts individuality, embraces equal opportunities and second chances, and takes everyone along for the journey. And when we go about our work, always remember who we are working for, because policy at its core is about people, the people that we negotiate with and advocate alongside, the people we explain to, but most of all, the people we impact. Remember this, it takes two things to create diamonds: pressure and heat. Let's continue to apply the pressure and heat that our students need to turn into the diamonds that they are intended to be. If we do that, our path forward will be a very rewarding journey. I am so excited about the discussions and strategy sessions that we have planned today. It's our goal to leverage the voices and skills of students, families, educators, and advocates who are finding solutions to educational inequities that existed before or have surfaced or been exacerbated as a result of the pandemic. I look forward to speaking with all of you during the next 2 days, and I really, really appreciate you. Thank you, and let's continue to get in, as Brother John Lewis would say, get into some good trouble. And so now to the special moment we have planned for you. To kick off our boot camp, we have a very special guest with us today. Now, she's a special guest today, but she's our family always. She's no stranger to us who have been around education advocacy. Karin Chenoweth is our writer in residence at EdTrust, and she has led our efforts to learn from and write about successful and improving schools with significant populations of students of color and children from low-income backgrounds. Karin has authored and co-authored 5 books. She is a very much sought-after speaker. I am a true believer in her Twitter feed, so make sure you find her on Twitter. Before joining EdTrust, Karin wrote a weekly column on schools and education for the Washington Post. And before that, she was a senior writer and executive editor for Black Issues in Higher Education, which has since been renamed Diverse Issues in Higher Education. She has written for such publications as Education Week, American Teacher, American Educator, Educational Leadership, and the Washington Post magazine. When asked what drew her to education, she said, and I quote, "We all have a responsibility to take part in the creation of a more perfect union. Providing an excellent education to all children is the bedrock of that responsibility. And if we don't get it right, all other efforts will be fruitless." If we don't get it right, all other efforts will be fruitless. That's, whew, okay. I'm very sad to report that despite our many efforts, bribes, cajoling, all the other things that you would do to keep someone, we want her to stay, that Karin will be retiring after almost 18 years at EdTrust. So, I asked the team, I would like some time to sit with Karin and have others benefit from the work she's seen, the people that she's met, the stories that she's written about. So time will not be long enough. So please look Karin up at some point during the conference to learn more. And we will always, again, be able to track her down. Don't forget that. But definitely follow her on Twitter. So without further ado, please welcome Karin Chenoweth to the stage. All right. I'm really excited about this.
I'm really nervous about it. I told Denise I wrote everything out that I wanted to say, and now I don't remember any of it.
So I had the, I'm riffing a little bit here because I just want to tell them a little bit more about you. I was asked to speak to the chief state school officers about the challenges on early literacy as more state leaders were trying to take that on. And I'm a policy nerd. That's what I do. I love talking policy. I love strategizing. I love negotiating. Which is to say, I did not benefit from years of experience learning about early literacy and the science of reading. But I had really immediate access to 2 people who did. So Tanji and Karin came and sat with me, and it was a master class in all you need to know. And so I'm personally very thankful because that master class I've used over and over again, but you don't get that kind of master class unless she has, or you've talked with leaders across the country. That's where you get the master class. So today's going to be a little snippet of a master class.
I thought we were telling you stuff you already knew.
No, hardly.
That's how good she is.
So I'm a fan of all of your work. But what we have all come to really look forward to in that work is documenting success stories around the country. And one of the most important parts of advocacy is pointing out the real world examples of things that are working. We've allowed this false narrative that students of color can't learn or can't be taught or they're different. And that is not the case, and that's at the heart of your work, is talking about those examples. So can you speak to how you became interested in highlighting success stories and how you feel it has had an impact on our advocacy work?
So when I was a reporter and an education writer, I wrote a lot about schools, and I kept encountering the same myth, the same narrative over and over. Well, and as a parent also, when my kids were in school, they went to school in Montgomery County. Those of you who don't know this area, Montgomery County is divided into west and east, basically. And west is very, very wealthy, Potomac, think the wealthiest, most privileged, most exclusive public schools in the country. And the east is not so much. And we live in the east. And so throughout their schooling, I would have teachers actually physically tell me, well, you can't expect those children to learn the way your children do. And I was always just so shocked. So, I mean, I experienced this narrative over and over as both a reporter and as a parent and as a student, actually. I knew that wasn't the case. I knew it in my bones, but I couldn't really demonstrate it. I couldn't demonstrate it. But I used EdTrust, and I had a whole relationship. I was a reporter relying on their data and their information, and so Katie Haycock was the founder of EdTrust. And I wasn't sure I should tell this, but this is what she would do. She had like 125 slides. If anybody has ever seen her, present, 125 slides in 20 minutes. She would just slam you with bad news, bad news, bad news, bad news. But here, there's a little piece of good news up here. Bad news, bad news, bad news. And, I latched onto that little bit of good news. And she knew that she was not reaching people particularly with that, because she wasn't really able to say, well, how do they get the good news? How does this school get to be this high-performing school? And with what the education world calls challenging students. And so she knew that she needed more than that. So she hired me to help find and learn from those schools. So it wasn't just like, there's a school that has good data, why can't you have good data? Turns out educators don't really enjoy that so much. And so I started looking, and there was a whole team of people at EdTrust looking for these schools, and it was very difficult to find them in any kind of real systematic way. So we did what I call data spelunking, and really just trying to find these schools and going through the data, really identifying them through numbers, through test score data. And I have, over the years, decided that you can get if you're a high SES, if you're a high socioeconomic status school, you can get high test scores. And it has nothing to do with the school. It has to do with a whole range of things, including private tutoring. The west side of Montgomery County has endless numbers of $70 an hour tutoring, right? So you don't know what the effect of the schools are. But if you're serving a population of students who don't get that kind of private tutoring, now you're starting to see the effect of schools, right? If you have high test scores or improving test scores. And so we were identifying them through the numbers, and what I worried about was I was going to be just seeing test prep factories, robotic teachers just endlessly drilling kids. And what I found was completely not that. Because if you've got good test scores and improving test scores in a serving children from low-income backgrounds, you're doing everything right. Well, you're one of two things. You're either cheating or you're doing everything right. I'm a reporter, so like I'm always watching out for cheating, and we found some. They're like that's not an unknown phenomenon, but it's not very common. And you can kind of tell. If you're doing everything right, you've got a respectful culture, respectful to students, respectful to teachers, respectful to parents. You've got serious chops thinking about curriculum. You've got collaborative teachers. You've got a whole host of things. Most importantly, you have a school leader who knows what they're doing. And thank you. And I will just say, the way we've set up education in this country, for the most part, we don't take principals very seriously. We let pretty much anybody, I shouldn't say anybody, but you can become a principal in an online academy, which is horrifying. We have fewer principals in this country than we do surgeons. We take being a surgeon really seriously in this country. We don't take being a principal very, very seriously. And if you have a highly skilled principal, that principal can help all the teachers, all the students. We have tons of documentation of that, and that's what I've seen firsthand. So, did that answer your question? I have no idea if that answered your question. I'm so sorry. I'm a tangentialist. So, so over the years, I've gone to dozens and dozens of high-performing and improving schools that serve children of color and children from low-income families. And there's no one, like, it would be really nice if it was like, and they all have Google Chromebooks, and if we just all get, Google Chromebooks to everybody, that'll solve it. I mean, it would be so nice. That's not what it is. It's about organizing instruction around the belief that all kids can learn. And that can take a lot of forms. There's a lot of ways to skin a cat, and, depending on your resources, depending on your locale, depending on, the size of the school and so forth, it looks a little different every place. It's not the same, but they all organize around that belief, and that belief is key. And we have to ensure, and that's what's important about these proof points, is that they can help build belief. Not that, oh, well, if I go visit that school, I'll, then I can adopt their uniform policy. You can adopt their uniform policy, but that ain't going to do anything for you. So I've been really privileged. I've been really lucky to be able to go to all these schools in the most far-flung places in the country, in, sort of the wilds of the Ozarks and, Brownsville, Texas. I mean, just all over the country, I've been able to see skilled educators getting this work done. And so I hope that fuels you to know this work can be done, it's being done, and we can expect this of all schools, but we have to provide them with the kind of conditions under which they can thrive.
Do you have a most memorable experience from these travels, school or something that someone told you that just you were like, yes, that's part of it?
Well, very early on, I kind of stepped on my line here, but very early on I went to a school in Boston called the Murphy. Massachusetts people, it's a pretty well-known school. There, sorry. And it was being led then by Mary Russo, who was the principal, and she had led a lot of improvement. She was quite well known in Boston. And she was showing me around. She gave me a master class. You talk about a master class in what it means to be a principal, what it means to organize a school around instruction, around the belief that all kids can learn. And, you know, as I say, this was early on, and I was still asking questions like this. I said, some people say this work can't be done. And she looked at me and she said, it's being done. And that did, you know, that really kind of gave me, sort of stiffened my spine, and, you know, and I was like, okay. And early on, we got a lot of criticism for this work. And we're still getting criticism for this work because a lot of people will say, oh, well, those are just schools of those are stories of miracle schools. They're not miracle schools. These are ordinary educators in ordinary school districts. We were extremely careful to never go to a school that was an exclusive magnet or had an exam, you know, or any kind of entrance requirements, because we knew that would just, like, educators wouldn't believe that. Now, they still, you know, it's still a hard argument, but I feel like there's been a change in the education. For one thing, there's been 20 years of really pretty good research that we can actually rely on and that educators can rely on about certain kinds of things, like the science of reading, like the importance of principles and the importance of principal preparation. And so these are things that educators are actually working on, and I feel like there's more and more of an opening right this minute, and I actually think that's why there's this horrendous attack that is this backlash against schools, against public schools, because this is like, the schools are actually on the precipice. They're not there. You know they're not there. We know they're not there. But they're on the precipice. They're grappling with these problems. You know, why is it that black kids are not achieving at the same rate? And they're actually grappling with this right now. Within the field, they're looking at discipline policies. They're looking at, and you know, part of that is because of advocacy, and part of it is some introspection, and part of it is some accountability. Like, there's a whole range of things but I really feel like we are on the precipice of the education field grappling with it and solving some of these problems, if we can get them the space they need. Because right now, right as they're grappling, right as they're sort of facing home truths about the way they've been organized, they are undergoing this unbelievable attack.
Yeah. I appreciate that, because I've said that a number of times, that we can't allow them to hide the ball, you know, through these attacks. Thank you for that. I want to finish up by having you give some words to the choir here about how we can together continue to pioneer forward based on the work that you've done.
Well, as I say, we need to find the space where educators can grapple with this and feel some pressure. You know, I'm not saying take the pressure off, but where they can grapple with this, where they can really think about how they organize their instruction, how they organize their school culture and so forth. And I think one of the things that is a really powerful lever is working on the principal preparation. I know it sounds boring, but state policy actually has a lot to say about principal preparation. Let's shut down those online academies for principals. I mean, just shut them down. They do nothing. We have, every state in this country has thousands of people who are certified to be principal, many of whom have no interest in being principal, and if they do become principal, they leave after 2 years, which is disastrous for children. And you can, if you look at the principal, you know, sort of churn, it is worst for schools that serve children of color and children from low-income families. And when you have that churn, you never get to where you want to get to. So I mean, I'm just a big believer in, you know, like go and push the states to up the credential, up the requirements for principals. There's a lot of literature. Just grab me and I'll let you know. There's a lot of literature about what can be done at the state policy level. And I think that's a real role for advocates. The other thing is we've gotten so intensely focused on teachers need to be in the classroom. We need to have everything in the classroom. Teachers actually need time out of the classroom. If they don't have time out of the classroom, they, A, really can't teach effectively, and B, they don't have the ability to collaborate with their colleagues. If we think it is possible for a single teacher to know everything necessary to teach every child in that teacher's classroom, everything that that child needs to know every year, we're crazy. It's impossible. At the elementary level, you only have 25 or 30 kids, only. But you have to know how to teach reading, how to teach math, how to teach social studies. You need to know some social studies. You need to know some history. You need to know some geography. You need to know science. And when the budgets get cut, you have to bring in the art card and the music card too. That's impossible. The only way, and you know, at the secondary level, you've only got one discipline, but you've got 120, 150 kids. Guess what? Again, impossible. The only way to serve all children is by marshaling the full power of a school and even a district and even a state, the knowledge and expertise of all the professionals in that building and even beyond that building. They need time to do that. And we have to, I think we need to advocate for more time. And of course, right now, with substitute teachers being in such short supply, you've got teachers not having, they're not taking lunch, they're not taking their planning period, which is inadequate to begin with. We are putting teachers under such strain, and then we attack them for grooming kids. Are you kidding me? Right? This is an attack on public schools writ large, and to my mind, that is an attack on democracy writ large. I know we all have complicated feelings about our public schools, but if we don't save them, we will have lost something terrible. We will have lost the possibility of being able to build a democracy. So, I mean, I think of this in very grand terms, but then very granular terms. Go and get rid of those online principal academies. like that's easy. Or, you know, intellectually it's easy. Politically it's really difficult. Close down those university programs that just offer principal preparation on Tuesday night, because that's like when they have free. Like, that's not helping anybody, and it's not helping the kids. The kids, every child needs a good principal, and that principal will ensure good instruction throughout the day. Sorry.
No, I love it.
I'm a tangent.
I could spend all morning doing this. Karin, thank you so much. Thank you for your time at Trust. You know we're going to celebrate you even more, but thank you for letting us have this conversation this morning. So thanks.
Thank you.